Chapter 25 Priesthood. For whoso receiveth these two priesthoods receiveth my Father's kingdom. Therefore all that my Father hath shall be given unto him, and this is according to the oath and covenant which belongeth to the priesthood. Doctrine and Covenants. A priest or priestess is one who has authority to perform sacred rituals, recite sacred texts, and, in many cases, speak for the gods. Together these people comprise a priesthood, or a religious social order. There have been many men and women who were more connected to the divine than others. They have been called prophets, prophetesses, priests, priestesses, shamans, and oracles. The word priest comes from the Old English and Germanic word praeost, which means elder or older. Praeost is related to the Greek word presbyteros and the Latin presbyter. So priest, elder, and presbyterian all denote one who is old and wise. Wise, wisdom, and wizard are synonyms. The word sage comes from the Latin sapius, which has come to mean old and wise. The Sanskrit word for sage is shramana, which clearly connects to the Evenki word shaman in Siberia. Many individuals have the mistaken idea that a prophet can never be wrong. They are unique people, but not infallible. They make the same mistakes as you and I. The difference is that they are able to tap into or access inspiration from a divine source at times, which may come as psychic abilities or the power to heal. Some have visions or premonitions of the future. Other times, information is given to them from visitors from the skies. The prophets that started their own religion have a lot in common. In 1000 BCE, a prophet named Zoroaster founded a new religion based on Avestan teachings. 500 years before Christ, the Buddha was born. He created what has become a major world religion based on post-Vedic teachings. 500 years later, Jesus started another world religion built on Jewish teachings and some Eastern ideas. Fast forward another half century, and Muhammad founds yet another religion. Though I am a proponent of unity, tolerance, and peace among all people, and Muhammad was not, I dare say that he was a prophet. All prophets make mistakes, some graver than others. A millennium and a half later, a prophet named Joseph Smith started another worldwide religion based on Christianity. There are some interesting correlations between these founders. Jesus and Buddha were both of royal blood. Muhammad was raised by his uncle, and British legends tell of Jesus' travels with his uncle Joseph of Arimathea to the British Isles, where they mined for copper. Smith searched for ore in the earth as a child, and, like Jesus, he displayed extraordinary gifts of seership at a young age. Buddha studied various paths before finding the middle way. Jesus learned from the Essenes, Egyptian mystery schools, and Eastern monks. Muhammad lived in a trade route where he would have been exposed to many ideas, such as those of pre-Islamic Sufis. Smith joined the mystery school of the Masons and gathered what he could from Kabbalah, Christianity, ancient Egypt, and European folk magic. Buddha gained enlightenment at the Bodhi tree, Adam from the tree of knowledge, and Jesus from the tree he was hung on. Jesus ascended to the heavens from Jerusalem, so did Muhammad at the Temple Mount. Temple Mount is also said to be where Jesus was presented as a baby, where Solomon built his temple, where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, where King Melchizedek ruled, and where Adam lived for a time. In Muhammad's night journey to the sky, he met with Jesus, Moses, and Abraham. Jesus and Joseph Smith both died as martyrs and sealed their teachings with their blood. Mormons and Muslims. At the risk of being labeled a blasphemer by both Mormons and Muslims, I will list some more parallels between Joseph Smith and Muhammad. Both piggybacked off of the Jewish Talmud and Christian New Testament. Both created new scripture for their religion that they received from an angel, Gabriel and Moroni. They received revelations in ways most people would find bizarre, like going into convulsions in a cave, Muhammad, or looking through a stone in a dark hat, Smith. Both were charismatic leaders that sought to restore true religion and rapidly gained followers and had an inner ring of disciples. Both practiced plural marriage, also known as polygamy. Of Muhammad's 11 wives, his favorite was Aisha, whom he married when she was only 6 years old. He did wait for her to turn 10 before consummating the marriage as a 53-year-old man. Smith is reported to have married 28 to 49 women while in his 30s. Most were in their 20s, and the youngest was 16. Both movements received persecution early on, causing the followers to be driven out of their promised land. The Mormons left the part of Missouri that they called Zion, the New Jerusalem, and built a new city in Nauvoo, Illinois, where Smith became not only a religious leader, but mayor and lieutenant general of a state militia that was sanctioned by Abraham Lincoln and others. Smith's militia never engaged in bloodshed. The Muslims left Mecca to Medina, where Muhammad became the spiritual and political leader. He formed the Jihad to battle the Quraysh, the controlling tribe of Mecca. As for differences, Smith and his followers were persecuted because he taught plural marriage and a plurality of gods. Muhammad taught against the plurality of gods. When the Jihad took over Mecca, Muhammad destroyed the artworks depicting the Arabic pantheon of deities, declaring that there is only one God, Allah. Ironically, Allah was the name of one of the idols that he smashed. Before Islam, Allah was the sky god in Mecca. Muhammad's father's name is Abdullah, meaning slave of Allah. Allah is the same jealous God that told Moses to kill men, women, and children with the Israelite army because they worshipped other gods. He is Enlil, the mean god of Sumerian tales. In his name, Muhammad sent men to Dul Khalasa, the southern Kaaba, to kill the priests, destroy their shrine, and rape their women. Muhammad's story is also comparable to that of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who dismissed all the gods of the priest of Amun and left the throne of Thebes to build a new one in Amarna, where the one god, Aten, was worshipped. But it was the statues of Akhenaten that were smashed after his death. The jihad slaughtered many people. The Mormon militia, however, did not kill. They continued as a battalion until after the church fled to Mexican territory, present-day Utah. Divisions. After the death of the Buddha, Buddhism split into two major sects, called Theravada and Mahayana. After the death of Christ, a separation occurred within the Christian church over the matter of authority. Most followed Peter as the successor, while some followed Mary and are considered Gnostics. After Muhammad's death came the Islamic schism. Some followed Aisha's father and became the Sunnis, while others followed Ali and are called Shias. After Smith died, most Mormons followed Brigham Young to Utah, but some followed Joseph's wife and son in the reorganized church, Rlds. The religions that these prophets created have impacted the entire world. In general, a prophet or prophetess follows a line of authority, a succession of priesthood that has been passed on in some way. The succession can be passed on through a ritual such as when Jesus laid his hands on the apostles, or it can be passed on through a bloodline. These two have been the reason for many divisions. In Mormon teachings, Adam was given the priesthood authority and passed it on to his children. Under the Mosaic law, only men of the tribe of Levi were priests. They held the lesser priesthood called the Aaronic or Levitical priesthood, which involved ritual duties in the outer parts of the temple. The innermost part, called the Holy of Holies, was only entered by the high priest, a priest of the order of Melchizedek. Moses was a Levite and thus born into the lesser priesthood, but he received the high priesthood from his father-in-law Jethro of Midian. Both Moses and Jethro descended from Abraham, but through different wives. Abraham received the high priesthood from a Canaanite king named Melchizedek. It is not known where or how Melchizedek received the priesthood, but a general line of priesthood can be traced from Adam to Jesus. The Catholic Church claims priesthood authority through the Apostle Peter, who they call the first pope. Latter-day Saints claim that the line died off through apostasy and the martyrdom of the saints, only to return to the earth when Peter, James, and John came to Joseph Smith and laid their hands on his head. This is an important doctrinal claim for both of these churches because it allows them to say that theirs is the one true church approved by God. The Protestant churches and non-denominational Christian churches do not have this claim. People all over the world have been initiated into the priesthood, not just those in the line to Jesus. Joseph Fielding Smith taught that there has always been at least one high priest on the earth. One splinter group, mentioned in the Book of Mormon, brought the priesthood to the Americas from Jerusalem. As the story goes, a large group of their descendants gathered to be baptized, but did not have the authority to perform the ritual. Then a prophet named Alma came to their land. Alma was a wicked priest that had a conversion similar to that of the Apostle Paul. He baptized himself and then all of the believers. This story is somewhat anomalous in Mormonism, but it illustrates the point that even a wicked priest can hold the priesthood authority. A priestly class performed the rituals in all the ancient religions and mystery schools, and who are we to doubt whether they sprang from a legitimate source or not? Joseph Smith Jr. joined the Freemasons after he received the priesthood from the apostles, and he said that Freemasonry is a remnant of the ancient priesthood. How many other remnants might there be? In the last years of his life, Smith developed new temple rituals that are very much in line with those of ancient mystery schools and various secret societies. All church members at that time had to be raised to the 3rd degree in Masonry as a preparation for the LDS temple ceremonies. Smith's dying words were from the Masonic Grand Hailing Sign of Distress. Despite Smith's esteem for Masonry, the Masonic Lodge of Nauvoo, Illinois had its charter revoked due to the fact that they were initiating women into the lodge. Priests and priestesses. Women and men alike could join the priesthoods of antiquity. Among the oldest cultures, the shaman of a tribe was often female. They were the wise ones that could see beyond time and space. One might call them psychic or clairvoyant. Other names are seer, revelator, prophet, oracle, magi, mage, magus, magician, miracle worker, wise one, wizard, witch, sage, sorcerer, and saint. These guides of tribes would often be consulted on matters of health, thus the modern title witch doctor. In ancient India, the priests and priestesses were wise men and women or sages called Pandit and Pundit Ain. They would perform rituals, play devotional music, and pass on their knowledge to others. The Rig Veda mentions many women sages. Men and women of Egypt would also give offerings to the gods in their temples and play ceremonial music. The ancient Greek and Roman religions had celibate priestesses that the gods would speak through to deliver messages. As far back as the Babylonians, we see an attack on the feminine side. The motherly original goddess of the universe, worshipped by the Sumerians called Namu, was warped by the Babylonians into a monstrous enemy called Tiamat. The Abrahamic religions tried to wipe out the divine feminine by denying goddesses and only allowing men to perform priestly duties. There is a passage in Luke that tells of a prophetess that could foretell future events named Anna, but those are few and far between in Christianity. There is evidence that Zoroastrian women would tend the sacred temple fire, a priestly duty, long ago, but during Islamic rule, women priests, or mobeds, did not exist. Presently, the dwindling religion has allowed women to become priests again. The Gnostics held on to the divine feminine with the worship of Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, but the Roman Catholic Church did their best to kill them off. The Apostle Paul didn't help when he said things like, men should not have long hair, and women should not talk in church. In the LDS Church, members are taught that only men can hold the priesthood, that is, hold an office in the priesthood. What most members do not realize is that women receive the same power in the priesthood as men do in the temple rituals. Women may not preside over a congregation, only over women's and youth organizations. Women do not perform rituals in a church, but they do in the temples. In the temples, women and men both receive the ordinances of the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthoods, and are set apart as priests and priestesses, kings and queens to the Most High. Mormons could do better at addressing this issue, But the Freemasons need to do even more. To join the Masons, one must swear an oath that they will never let a woman join. Thus, the revocation of Joseph Smith's Masonic charter after admitting women. The Masonic rites and rituals stem from ancient mystery schools and magical religious practices, but the purpose and meaning of them seem to be lost. For example, after becoming a sublime prince of the royal secret of the 32nd degree, I was anointed with oil on the forehead and pronounced a prophet, which sounds cool, but is never mentioned afterward. Like most of the rituals, no one knows what to make of it. Many great and influential men have been drawn to Masonry in the past, but present-day Masonry seems to be lacking. A description given in a famous book written by two 33rd degree Masons goes as follows. Freemasonry for us, and every brother we know, is little more than a social club providing an opportunity to indulge in some amateur theatricals, followed by a meal and plenty of beer and wine. Break-offs, such as co-masonry, admit both men and women into their lodges. Magic. As hinted at earlier, priests and priestesses, both ancient and modern, would often have abilities that most people do not understand. They are known to prophesy or predict the future in various ways. A most famous priesthood in Delphi called Pythia would go into a frenzy as the words of the god Apollo would come through her. Oracles like Pythia were consulted on many matters, sometimes for potential war outcomes, sometimes for life advice. It was known, however, that the oracles were not always 100% accurate, and this was taken into account. Just as Joseph Smith or Edgar Cayce were not always right, yet their high rate of accuracy validates them as prophets. Smith used dowsing or divining rods, as well as a stone that was given to him as a kid, to find hidden things beneath the earth. He also wore a Jupiter talisman at all times for protection. He used another peepstone when translating the Book of Mormon. The use of seer stones is a form of scrying, like looking at a crystal ball or black mirror till images come out. Some Native Americans would gaze at the smoke of a fire for the same purpose. The purported prophet Nostradamus used a copper bowl with black ink in it for scrying. Messages came to him from the images on the ink. Of course, these lead to many other divining tools and future-telling practices, such as reading one's tea leaves, palmistry or palm reading, phrenology, reading the shape of the skull, tarot cards, the I Ching of China, the casting of lots done by the Jews, Ifa divination, the casting of palm nuts by a Yoruba priest, used in Nigeria as well as in America and the Caribbean by Voodoo and Santeria priests. Auspicia, reading the signs of birds, done by Greek prophets called auspex. That is where the word auspicious comes from. Greeks also used hepatoscopy, which is to read the liver of animals to divine the future. Many ancient cultures would slaughter an animal and observe their entrails as a form of prognostication. Then there is the famous medium of astrology, which means the study of the stars. The Zoroastrian magi looked to the heavens for signs. The book of Genesis states that the stars are for signs and seasons. Signs in the heavens were seen by the Mesoamericans as indications of anticipated events. The wizard John Dee became the chief advisor to Queen Elizabeth I after casting her birth chart. Through mathematical equations based on the position of the stars, Dee informed Elizabeth that her sister Mary would soon die and she would be crowned Queen of England. Fictional characters such as Merlin, Gandalf, and Dumbledore were patterned after the wise John Dee. Dee, like Joseph Smith after him, used the seer stone to receive angelic messages. Only it was Dee that acted as a scribe, while Edgar Kelly did the scrying through a crystal ball, whereas Smith was the scryer and Oliver Cowdery was his scribe. These may all seem miraculous, but a miracle is a phenomenon that people do not currently understand. However, there is always a scientific explanation. Reading letters was considered sorcery by the Norse. Only a wizard could use the magic runes. But we can easily see today that Norse runes are closely related to the phonetic alphabet of Phoenicia. Magic is the work of magi, and simply means wise act or learned action. The prophet Elijah practiced magic too. He raised a widow's son from the dead by stretching himself over the boy 3 times and calling on Yahweh. He made a container of wheat and oil miraculously never empty. He summoned fire. We are familiar with the magic of Moses, his snake sculpture that could heal, his turning water into blood, and a staff into a snake. Then, of course, there are the times when the Magus Jesus mysteriously multiplied bread, turned water into wine, and walked on water. Many other inexplicable or magical feats by prophets and priests are recorded in the Bible. Mouthpiece of God. In the Torah, a prophet named Balaam saw the vision of the Almighty falling into a trance, but had his eyes open. Some priestesses, like the oracle at Delphi, would appear possessed by a particular god as they revealed information as a mouthpiece for the god. This same frenzied state occurs within the oracle of the Dalai Lama in present-day Tibet. In fact, spirit mediumship was and is practiced all over the world. The sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce would always place his hands over his solar plexus before going into a trance, so that unwanted entities could not enter his body while he spoke in a calm manner. Others are lucky enough to have visitors come and relay messages directly to them rather than through them. Reports of gods and angels coming down to give messages have always been around. A relief sculpture at Takebostan, Iran, depicts the high god Ahura Mazda and the sun god Mithra investing Emperor Shapur II with power and authority. The law code stele of Hammurabi depicts him receiving the law from the sun god Shamash. Moses was given the law from the high god Yahweh. George Washington was visited by an angel that showed him a vision of 3 wars that would impact the U.S. The aforementioned John Dee and his scribe had many conversations with angels and endeavored to record the angelic written language. Emanuel Swedenborg was visited by angels and otherworldly beings. Joseph Smith had many visits from angels, old prophets, immortals, even Jesus and his father. Other mystics like Rudolf Steiner, H.P. Blavatsky, and Aleister Crowley have also claimed to have been visited by higher beings. Sufi writers like Idris Shah claim to have been contacted. The Persian poet Rumi wrote, "When I die, I shall soar with angels, and when I die to the angels, what I shall become, you cannot imagine." Joan of Arc was given messages from the Archangel Michael, the Archangel Gabriel, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. They gave her guidance and protection as she fulfilled her mission. In Mormon doctrine, those of the lesser or Aaronic priesthood hold the key to the ministering of angels, but I have not heard of any Mormons summoning angels. The methods of calling on angels are given in Enochian and ceremonial magic, but this is not recommended for the average person to dabble in, as people have gone insane by messing with it. Then again, Joseph Smith taught that the keys of the priesthood are certain signs by which we may communicate with spirits, and that there are signs in heaven, earth, and hell. The elders must know them all to be endowed with power. So it appears that it would be beneficial for one who was prepared to hold these keys and use them to gain wisdom and power from both light and dark sources. Along a similar vein is a book attributed to King Solomon called The Key of Solomon. The book describes how Solomon received a pentacle ring from Michael the Archangel, with which he could summon and command demons. Solomonic magic uses certain signs and words to communicate with angels and demons. The earliest manuscripts date back to the 14th century and were probably influenced by Jewish Kabbalah and Arabian alchemy. There are many today that claim to receive information from spirit guides and guardian angels. Others say that extraterrestrials are speaking through them as channels. I do not believe many of these reports, but some may be true. Who am I to judge? I do not doubt, however, that many people have gifts. Some are able to heal, others have premonitions, and some see angelic beings. One need not be a member of any particular group to have these gifts or priesthood power, but genetics might play a role. Training may also work, as in government PSYOP programs like remote viewing. The Rosicrucian group Amorc boasts their lessons to be effective in helping one develop inner psychic abilities. Magical practices are also laid out in Israel Regardie's book The Golden Dawn for any to read. A contemporary Hindu saint named Amma shares her gift of love by hugging thousands of people so that they can see the divine. Maybe love is the only kind of priesthood magic we need. but it would be nice to see into the future or be able to heal as Jesus did. Words for priest. India, Shramana, Brahman. Persia, Mobed. Sumeria and Babylon, Gala. Akkad, Kalu. Arabia, Kahin. Canaan, Kohen. Phoenicia, Kohen. Judea, Kohen. Turkey, Sankuni. Slavic, Volkov. Scythian, Inari. Greece, Haruspex. Rome, Auspex, presbyter. Etruscan, Haruspex. Celtic, Druid. Norse, Gothi. Egypt, Hemnacher, servant of deity. Nigeria, Yoruba, Babalawo. Igbo, Dibia. Chile, Machi. Peru, Umu. Yucatan, Aki. Mexico, Aztec, Tlamakaski. North America, Great Lakes area, Midewinini. Arctic Circle, Angakuk. Siberia, Shaman. Mongolia, Bog. China, Daoshi, Master of the Way. Japan, Kanushi, Godmaster. Shinshoku, works for the gods. Philippines, Babaylan. Malaysia, Bobohizan. Australia, Kordaicha. New Zealand, Tohunga. Hawaii, Kahuna.